Well, aside from planning and preparation, within that, I think you first need to think about what is it that we're trying to create, right? We had that at the beginning, but then how am I going to get there? Because you may say to me, Mark, I want a quote unquote good deal, to which I'm going to say to you, cool story, so does the other person. What does a good deal mean for you? What constitutes a good deal? So you might say, well, I want to make more money. I want to reduce risk. I want to improve communication. Could be a number of different things you do. But then I would say, okay, break those down. What are you going to actually negotiate into the deal to ensure the successful achievement of those things?
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, person you're about to hear from, really happy to bring you. He bills himself as the negotiations ninja, and your name is Mark Raffan. Mark, it's great to have you on the show. Hey, negotiation, everything in life eventually becomes a negotiation, right?
It always does, always will. Everything about living day to day is about negotiations.
So, being that that's the case, being a good negotiator, is it about winning, or is it about getting both sides or all sides what they want, or getting them closer to what they want?
Yeah, good first question. I'm going to say something controversial right off the hop. Win-win is the biggest lie that's ever been told in the negotiation world, but so is win-lose, because it's built on the same premise. Win-win presupposes that both parties can win. That's not possible. If you've been in the business world in general, you know that to be true. But even let's just say, for example, that both parties could win. Then you would need to know what the complete value of that deal is over the lifetime of that deal, which is almost impossible to know as well. And you've got to know that with complete certainty. And even if you could know that with complete certainty, what the deal is and the value of the deal is over the lifetime of that deal, then you would need to be able to be, quote unquote, fair with each other in distribution of that value. But what is fair really? Fair is based on what your perception of what fair is, and it's also based on what my perception of what fair is. And so we have to come to an agreement on what fair is, but we can't because it's not objective, it's subjective. And even if we were going to come to an agreement on what fair is, we would also need to be 100% transparent with each other about the value and about our own interests and everything that's going on in our business between each other. So I would argue that the whole idea is built on faulty ground. Now, the number one objection I get to this, of course, is, Mark, that's not what win-win is about. Win-win is about how you feel after the negotiation. It's about if both parties feel like they've won. Well, that actually makes less sense to me than the first thing, because if it's just about making you feel good, then I could do that all day, right? All I have to do is to emotionally manipulate you during the conversation. So I think the premise that is built on is a bit faulty. I would caution people when they think about win-win that it's now incumbent upon them to create a win for the counterparty. That puts you in a very dangerous position and opens you up to bad actors who would use your good ideas or your collaborative nature against you in that negotiation. So first, I want you to think about what it is, the value that you're trying to create for your organization. They obviously want to create value for them. That's why they're talking to you, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be having a conversation with you. So What is it that you're trying to get value out of?
So is it a zero-sum game? So it's not a zero-sum game. So then the question is, sometimes you can make too good a deal for yourself where it's so bad for the other party that the deal is going to blow up, it's going to fall apart. So it isn't just about achieving all your objectives at the expense of the counterparty and right.
Yeah, I'm not saying that mutually beneficial deals aren't possible, but I'm saying it's not your job to ensure they get a great win. So I think the philosophy behind this is very, very important. Philosophically speaking, don't go into it making it your job to ensure that they get a win. That's their job. It's their job to ensure that they get a win or value from the negotiation.
But if you make too good a deal and their value isn't there, that deal's going to fail, right? So you don't want to, yes, you want to pursue your objectives, but within reasonable limits, right?
Sure. Can I counter that with a counter argument?
Sure.
What do we determine as reasonable? Is reasonable based on what your perception of what reasonable is? If it is, what is that based on? Is that based on data, or is that based on fear of rejection? Where most people would, now for you, for example, you may be in a position where you're like, okay, I've got 45 years of experience doing this. I know what quote unquote reasonable is. For the vast majority of people that I speak to, reasonable is based on fear of rejection.
I would say that reasonable is where both parties gain from the transaction. You might gain more, and that's okay. But there's a benefit to both sides. Whereas if it's unreasonable, then the costs to one party are too great, and it's going to make it the outcome of this deal negative, and the deal may never happen as a result.
Yeah, I love where your head's at. What I would caution for people, though, when they think about this is be very cautious of how you determine what reasonable is versus what reasonable isn't. Because if it's what you determine as reasonable is that I get a gain, or even if either side gets more, that's fine. If all I have to do at that point is say, well, the gain on this is unreasonable. Like, why am I not getting?
So just like a lawsuit case in court, I assume negotiations are won and lost on preparation, and often preparation alone, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the vast majority of the time, most people are winging it. And I think we've probably got the media to blame for that. I mean, if you watch any major commercial type movie like a Wolf of Wall Street or a Boiler Room or something like that, you see these amazing salespeople create deals out of seemingly thin air. The reality is that's not true. It comes with a lot of preparation.
Right. And preparation. So I think Sun Tzu said, you have to know your enemy, but you need to know yourself even better than you know your enemy.
Yes, amen to Sun Tzu. Correct. And he also said, tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. But most people think that negotiation is all tactics, right? How you say the thing, the cadence of your words, how you inflect on certain things. No, most of it comes down to the strategy and preparation that you have.
All right. So what other tools do you bring to the negotiating table?
Well, aside from planning and preparation, within that, I think you first need to think about what is it that we're trying to create, right? We had that at the beginning, but then how am I going to get there? Because you may say to me, Mark, I want a quote unquote good deal, to which I'm going to say to you, cool story, so does the other person. What does a good deal mean for you? What constitutes a good deal? So you might say, well, I want to make more money. I want to reduce risk. I want to improve communication. Could be a number of different things you do. But then I would say, okay, break those down. What are you going to actually negotiate into the deal to ensure the successful achievement of those things?
So I'll give you an example. My HOA here, they wanted to redo the pool house facility. So, I basically figured out what they wanted, talked to the guy, and then, he puts forth a proposal. Then they come back with a bunch of changes, which were meaningless. Didn't really save anything. And I'm trying to explain, look, contractors, they know how to get you here. They're either got to cut corners, or when you change something, they're going to hit you with a change order, and they're going to make that money back. So you're better off just acknowledging the fact that they need to make a profit, regardless what the number is. If you push for too good a deal, you're going to get hit with change orders. And you can't explain this to these people. They just don't know. They haven't negotiated.
Right. And important in that is you also knew what you wanted as a part of the leadership of the HOA, right? You wanted to ensure a smooth process. You probably had a timeline that you wanted to hit. You probably wanted to reduce some liability as a result of all that. Like, there were some key things that you probably want to hit too.
Very true. Very true. Well, I find it fascinating that most people, like you say, they go into a negotiation, they wing it. You don't really know what you want. So therefore, you don't know if you got it, and you don't know if you won or lost.
Correct.
But sometimes you make these deals, like you said, everything seems reasonable. The company, a consultant, basically he develops a marketing plan for big companies, household names.
Right.
And he doesn't really want to do it. He doesn't need to do it, but he says, look, I know my thing is going to work. You're going to give me 6% of revenues in perpetuity, right? And they need him so badly at that point that it seems like a great deal. 20 years down the road, they're still paying him royalties, millions of dollars a year, and they'll do anything to find the door, but they know they can't get out of it. So,
yeah, this is what I mean by in terms of the total value of the deal over the lifetime of that deal, right? Like that's the perfect example of what I was talking about. So understanding that at the beginning of the conversation and determining that could be very, very beneficial to your organization long term. I mean, think about if you grew a business from, let's just say young 7 figures, right? You've got a $1.5, $2 million business, but you grow that into a $200 million business. 6% at $2 million doesn't seem outrageous. 6% at $200 million seems crazy, right? So when you think about the scope and scale of the business, that's why that's so important.
Exactly what we're talking about here. And yeah, when you were a 10th the size or 100th the size, hey, it was pie in the sky.
Right, exactly.
Plan worked, and you wouldn't be there without him, right?
Right.
You'd be there without him. But if he had said, when you hit 200 million, I want 12 million a year, you would have told them to take a hike. But when you were negotiating, you never even thought that was possible. So you still won the negotiation. It's just that maybe he made a better deal than you thought he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So give us some real life examples of deals that you've helped negotiate for clients and others, some that have turned out amazing and some that have bombed.
Well, I'll tell you the one that bombed. It was one of the larger negotiations I've ever done. It was about 250 mil, and everything was going hunky-dory. And we were about 9 months into the negotiation, which is fairly reasonable based on a deal of that size. And I was getting stuck in the weeds. I was too deep in the weeds to see it. You know that saying, you're so deep in the forest that you can't see the forest through the trees? That's where I was, right? And we were arguing over minutia, nonsense, little things that within the grand scale of the deal didn't make a lot of sense, and we're butting heads over and over and over again. And should have done this way sooner, but I went to the person that I represented and I said, listen, we're stuck. We're stuck in this deal. I don't know what to do. And I got pulled out of the deal, and the counterparty side got pulled out of the deal. And they put 2 new people in place, and they closed that deal in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah,
so from
right?
Yeah, and we were like 75% done, right, at 9 months, and they closed the last 25% in the next 3 weeks. And that taught me a big lesson. The lesson is, don't let your ego get in the way of your success. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I've ever learned in a negotiation, because ultimately you want to be right in a negotiation oftentimes when your ego gets in the way. And so you could let being right get in the way of securing a really important deal for your business. And fundamentally, that changes the way that you think about the deal. You end up putting being right ahead of making money. And when you're putting being right ahead of making money, you're now emotional in the negotiation, and that's bad.
Yeah, you got to be objective and emotionally uninvolved.
Correct.
So you cut the deal and it popped the champagne cork. So this is an example where you got so tied up in the details that you forgot what the goal was.
That's right.
And luckily, your client didn't. So you realized you were becoming a hindrance.
That's right.
Right? So, all right. So,
and that's what a great lesson. I mean, it's not great for how you feel after. After that happens to you, you're like, oh my God, I'm a loser. What have I done? But it's an important lesson to learn.
Yeah, well, you came back down to earth, Yeah,
exactly.
Hey, because success, look, I always say you learn way more from your failures than you do from your successes. You should treat your failures like gold, or the lessons you learn from them. So what about one where it worked out the opposite, where you were the hero, everybody was outing?
Yeah, I mean, the opposite is also true. I've worked on many deals where I haven't. The goal is to not be the hero, strangely enough. The goal is to ensure that I represent the needs of the business that I'm representing in the best way possible. And when you always keep that top of mind, you're always more successful. One such deal in particular, similar kind of industry, similar kind of situation, we're able to get the feedback from the client about what it is they were trying to achieve down to the nth degree. We were crystal clear about what is it that we wanted to achieve during the negotiation, and we had a range of acceptable outcomes for each of those things. Going into the deal made that transaction a lot easier because we were very clear about what we could do, what we could not do, where we wanted to be, where we didn't want to be. And I didn't have to go back and forth with the client. I didn't represent the client's need. I didn't get stuck in the minutia. It was much, much easier to be able to get things done. And I think that's the major message that I want to leave with everyone today is be very, 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 very clear about what it is you want to achieve and how you think you might want to achieve it. Because once you're clear about that, the negotiation goes much smoother. I know there's a lot of people who try to be cagey with that sort of things in negotiation, or they say, well, if I just ask for what I want, that's too on the nose. I find the opposite is actually true. I find the more direct you are, the better it's going to be.
Right. Hey, so what about the concept of envisioning or visualizing the completed deal as you want it?
Love that.
Working from the end result to, it's kind of law of attraction, the new agey type stuff, but I find it really works.
It works. It does work because you get a clear vision of what success looks like for you. And I think where most people think that sounds maybe too fluffy is you're probably thinking too high level and not breaking that vision down. So if you want success, like what does the successful deal look like to you? How does it all end up? But then working backwards from that to create the concrete steps to be able to achieve that is where you need to be. If like the end state of visualization is too fluffy, work backwards from that.
So Mark, where do we find you on the web? How do we connect with you?
Easiest way to find me is right on the website, negotiations.ninja, or connect with me on LinkedIn. And you can just search my name, Mark Raffan, on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect. Just make sure that you said you listened to Kerry's podcast, because that's why I'll know how to connect with you.
Excellent. Really appreciate that. Hey, if you got a question for Mark or myself, if you've been stuck in a negotiation, it hasn't worked out, or it has worked out, we want to hear from you. Shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Go to the site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Show notes to this interview. You'll have Mark's link right there. Just click it. Go ahead while you're there. Sign up for your free newsletter. Mark, been a pleasure. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks so much for having me, Kerry. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.